Hey guys, Shady here. I'm going to do a quick little video on how advanced ballistics works, as well as how to utilize the Kestrel, range card, Vector 21, and the ATRAG. So first we'll start with the more simple stuff and my preferred method, which is the Kestrel and range card. The Kestrel is a device that lets you see the wind and other atmospherics going on at the time. In this case, I am blessed with basically no wind, so we'll have that to play with, and then a fairly standard 20.6 degrees Celsius. These are going to be important things to keep note on for moving forward, specifically the temperature and then the wind speed. For the sake of practice, we're going to keep it on user screen 1 now that we know the temp is 20.6. Next up, we have our range card. Our range card is going to be right here, and it throws a lot of information at us at once. But it's pretty simple. At the top, we have the basic information of what the chart is made with. So this is based on an 100 meter zero at this barometric pressure using this specific cartridge or magazine in the game. Then has it clarifies again the drop table for the muzzle velocity variance at the air temperatures, and then it covers the barrel. In essence, the top part right here in bold is dependent on what magazine you have loaded. As you can see, 147 grain ELDM, and then on my right here I have 147 grain ELDM. If I changed rifles, it would then change the barrel aspect, which would tie into that. And then from there, it builds information off to the rest. On the leftmost, we have the simplest one, which is target range. It's just in increments of 50 meters going down to 2550. To the right of that, we have our bullet drop, which is the main focus of the chart. It covers the various temperatures from negative 15 degrees Celsius to 35 degrees Celsius. Underneath the temperature, that is the muzzle velocity of the round as it exits the muzzle. So as you can see, in hotter temperatures, there's a higher muzzle velocity, and at lower temperatures, it's lower. Additionally, it's worth noting that at the bottom of the chart, we can see that there are hash marks or pound signs, depending on how old you are, for certain numbers. What this basically means is the round is no longer a one-hit kill at that range. So at negative 15 degrees Celsius, this thing stops being as potent at 1900 meters, whereas at 35 degrees Celsius, it gets an extra 200 meters before that cutoff happens. Moving on, to the right we have the wind chart. The most important thing to note about this chart is the 4 MPS factor, which is 4 meters per second wind. Typically, wind is going to be in the 1 to 2 range, depending on the settings of the mission and just the general settings used in your unit. So keep that in mind. So here at 500 at 10 degrees, it's zero point 0.8, but if I'm at 2 meters per second wind, I would only be doing zero point 0.4. And then if I had 1 meter per second wind, it would be zero point 0.2. That's one of the biggest catches that people get, and something to just keep in mind. To the right more, we get our final set of columns, which is the lead. This is for a 1 meter per second moving target. Personally, I don't really play around with this one. I tend to wait for my targets to become stationary and then engage, but if a target is on a consistent 1 meter per second speed, this is what you would want to add to your zero left or to the right to make sure that they hit. Same goes for the wind, sorta. We'll get into that. Now then, next what we need to do is to find a target to engage. So we're going to set ourselves up. We're going to deploy our bipod to make life easier. And then we have our first target, who is going to be an officer. With MSS, there are scopes with laser rangefinders, which is the device you see at the top. So all I have to do is center on him. I press T for me, and my range is 755 meters with a cosine of negative zero point 0.3. Uh, that's basically what's the angle from me to him. We're not going to worry about that, but at longer ranges, that is something to consider in your calculations. Now then, we have our target at 755 meters. What we're going to do is we're going to quickly open up our Kestrel. We're going to see that there is wind now at 0.3 meters per second. And we can press right shift K and we'll see that the wind is coming from our about 10 o'clock at less than 1. Now what we'll do is we'll open up our range card. And since the temperature is 20.6, we'll use the 20 chart. We're going to go down to 750, and there is 6.6. So that's going to be our initial 0. And I'll demonstrate if we were to just fire off of that. You can quickly do elevation by doing page up and page down. And if you need to do whole increments instead of just 0.1, if you hold shift, it'll go to the nearest whole value. Conversely, if you're doing windage, it's going to be the control page up, page down, and we get a little TFAR error because I have TFAR loaded. So we have positive, which is to the right, and then negative, which is going to be to the left, which is page down. So we're going to not account for windage at all, just to demonstrate. We're going to aim center mass on our target, and we're going to send our round out. And we see that the round landed slightly high and to the right by the 0.3 marker. So we can tell that it's the 0.3 marker based off of some information, but we'll focus on that later. So let's talk about why the shot went the way it did. It went high because of the fact that we are looking down at our target. So we'd want to likely go down by 1 per se. And then, for example, when we fire our shot, we'll see that it lands more level. And because the wind has happened to change up on us, it's landed closer to the target. So we're going to go back into our Kestrel. We're going to get a quick value, and it still says the same wind. When we're at this far range, the wind can be a little finicky moving through the whole area. Ace Ballistics baseline has a peculiar calculation for it, so it's slightly random in terms of what you can expect. That's okay. Just adjust as best you can and then make sure your follow-up shot connects. So we're going to go into our range card again, and we see that at 7.5 or 750 we have a windage adjustment of 1.3 to 1.2 depending on which one. We're going to stick to the middle because it's closer. At a larger distance we would probably split the difference. Here it doesn't matter as much. So the problem is this is for a total value of 4 and we're at 0.3. So if we were to cut this in half, we would get 6.65, and then if we cut that in half again, or 0.65, correction, and if we split that again, we would get about 0.8. .325. So we're going to do about zero point 0.1 adjustment to the left because we're trying to counteract the fact that the gun's bullet is being pushed to the right. So we're going to do our -1. We're going to line up our shot, and we're going to send her out this time. And we still get a little off, but a little closer. So we'll go to 0.3 and fire off a shot. And we hit him in the shoulder. A little high, but that's okay. Now, the two options you have are to either continue to zero, or since we're on target with a semi-automatic rifle, just aim a little to where we know the shot will land, and then put the round on target. That's the quick and easy way of doing marksmanship. The only downside is that this will only be effective about out to the range that you're able to do with your range card and how much you're able to finagle it. If we want to engage things at further targets, it's usually a good idea to move on to a stronger rifle. So in this case, we have a target out there, and he's sitting at a nice 1.5 kilometers. So we're going to do something a little different for him. We're going to swap over to a stronger rifle and utilize that. But now we're going to have to do some work. We'll want to, as a rule of thumb, check on our Kestrel again, check on what's happening. It's warmed up a little bit, not enough to really matter. And then our wind has gone to down to 0.1 and is now going from our 9 o'clock, so it's going directly to the right. So since this has a laser rangefinder as well, what we can do is line up our shot, and we'll see that he is 1536. This is a 338 Lapua Magnum, so it's going to be a much more powerful round going downrange, which means that it doesn't require as much adjustment as, say, the 6.5 Creedmoor would have. So we were at 1536, give or take, so that puts us at the 1500 marker and the 1550. What we'll do is we'll look at the 1500 marker first, which is 18.6, and then we look at the 1550, which is 19.8. So it's a difference of 1.2. So what we can do there is split the difference, which is going to be 0.6, which gives us 19.2 for a zeroing of 1525. And then we can do another split of 0.3 to get us about where we want. So we will do 19.5. And then we're going to go into our windage yet again. So here we have 2.7. In my experience, the best trick is cut it in half. That's going to be 1.35. Cut it in half again, and that's going to give us about 6, 7. No meme intended. So we're going to then take that and give it about 0.3 just to kind of work with what we got. In addition, we're going to be doing it to account for the Coriolis effect, which in real life is the effect of the bullet being in the air so long that we have to account for the rotation of the Earth, which ACE does emulate. So we're going to do about 0.4 left, and we'll see what happens. We'll line up our shot, and then fire one off. And we don't get to see where the impact landed. So with that, That's a sign that potentially something went wrong or something has impacted us from being able to hit the target. So I'm just going to adjust a little and we'll send another shot to the target in just a second. We now see our shot. It's now high and to the right. The reason for that is if we notice on our laser rangefinder, we're looking down to a fair bit for our target. So in this case, I'm going to adjust to 1.2 and we're going to go down to 19. And then we're going to put a round out again. And this time I can see exactly where my shot's going to land. And so we're going to aim center mass. I'm going to aim just to the right since I don't want to kill him just yet because we're going to go into the AtragMX now. As we can see, it landed right where I expected it to. And now we can work with the AtragMX. The AtragMX is a fun device that is able to give you an exact ballistic calculation for what you need. So the first thing you have to do is go into gun list and then find your cartridge. In this case, we have the 338 Lipo Magnum 300 grain. Here we can see that there are a fair amount of different options since they are preloaded due to a mod. We're going to start with this and we're going to quickly check in on everything though to make sure this is working as intended. So we're going to look at our gun. The bore, bullet weight, and bullet diameter should be right. And then we're going to look at the rifle twist and the muzzle velocity. These concern, correction, these can be concerning because they are an indicator of if we're working with the correct setup or not. So I'm going to open my range card. I'm going to see that my barrel is going to have a 1 9" twist. I'm going to have to calculate that from imperial into metric, but we can immediately see that based off of the muzzle velocities, we're not working with a proper set. So what we're going to need to do is to make those corrections. So I'm going to write this down since I'm going to have to make changes to that list. In this case, what I'm going to write down to note is going to mainly be the barrel is 1 9" twist. After that, I'm going to write down the muzzle velocities from -15 to 35, as this will be relevant when we're fixing the muzzle velocity chart. Since the AtragMX is working with a data sheet effectively, if it doesn't have all the data it needs, it's not very good at giving you the correct result, and then you miss and have a bad time. And we're not trying to have a bad time. So I'm just getting these written out. I'm frankly using my phone. I recommend if you're doing long range precision, you use your phone or a second monitor for things like this. It's a great thing to do to either take a picture of your range card or take a screenshot and put it on your second monitor. That way you're able to quickly reference it without having to pull it up. Or it lets you reference two different devices at once, like the Kestrel device, without having to deal with only getting to see one on the main screen at a time. So now we're at 25. And as we can see, the muzzle velocity stays largely consistent. That's because this is a very stable load with a very high ballistic coefficient. So we can expect effectively the same result as time goes on, and it more importantly stays consistent out during flight. 823, and then we get to 35, lastly being 825. Now then, we want to go into our ATRAG because we have to make those adjustments. We open up our AtragMX, and we're first going to make sure that our coefficient is also correct. We can then see that in the range card, I do believe. We cannot. So what we'll want to do is when you go into the ACE arsenal before emissions or when you're in the ACE arsenal in the mission, check out what the coefficient's going to be. That way you can quickly see where does that sit. The biggest issue that you might run into is you'll notice in the ATRAG it's using a C1 coefficient. A lot of the time you're going to see that it's a G7 coefficient that has been coded into the game. They are not exactly the same, but you'll want to go online and find the proper equation for that. I'm going to pause the recording right now so I can actually pull that up for you as it stands.